Alabama and Clemson continue to win and remain the top two teams to meet in the national title game with 2-1 odds. But between Alabama's defense and Clemson's lethargic offense, are we missing the signs of inevitable fall-off? And if so, which teams have the best chance to succeed them? Mitch and I will give our updated playoff picks, contenders, sleepers, and more, including our regular update on what was and what is in the week of college football on OFN College Football Weekly with Mitch Light of Athlon Sports. For this Thursday, the 3rd of October, 2019, on the Our-Lads Football Radio Network, brought to you by ourlads.com, providing the best pro and college football depth charts in the industry, and Athlon Sports, the leading publisher of preseason annuals for more than 50 years, sold in 60,000 outlets nationwide, including Athlon's 2019 College Football Annual, which is available at your local newsstands now. Mitch, good to talk to you again. Good to see you. It's October already.
It is. I'd like to say it's football weather, but it's about 99 degrees here in Nashville, Tennessee, so it's not quite football weather.
No, not quite, but we're getting there. I know. I don't know how. I know that front's coming down, which Saturday it's going to be a high of 74, low in the 50s, and then the long range is like into that's it. No more 80s for like the next 10 days, which means maybe that's it. Now, is it pushing to where you are?
Well, I will be Saturday night. I'll be patrolling the sidelines for Vanderbilt, Oxford, Mississippi, and I think high of mid-70s. So I think it'll be comfortable, good football weather there. But it's supposed to get a little chillier in a few days.
You're a little bit further west. It hasn't reached, of course, southwest for where we are in the southeast. But we're getting there. Okay, so bottom line is we're in October, so we have our picks to update from the preseason. If anybody wants to check that out, that's available on demand. That was when we were still doing audio shows. And keep in mind, every show we do is done audio and video, so you can decide which way you would like to check out the show. Let's start off first of all, before we get into breaking down the conferences, and then we'll give our predictions at the end of the show and also go over your picks. Let's talk. I guess if it was a bigger program, this would be the big news. But when a coach gets fired, we should lead off with it. We talked about Chris Ash possibly. The signs were there that he was going to be on his last legs, and then he got fired on Sunday, basically 24 hours after the Michigan game. We already talked about some coaching candidates last week. There's still some rumors about others this week. Same names, but we should talk about the fact that Greg Schiano's name has been up there, and I'm also going to be very intrigued to see how things go with Nunzio. I would not be surprised if he does a good job that he gets the job. He's got a real audition here.
How long has he been on the staff?
This is I believe his second year, but we know all the connections with him in New Jersey, and we know how important it is if you can recruit those kids in New Jersey. That's why I say if he can get these kids to win some football games with his recruiting ability, that could go a long way in giving him the job. It's a long shot, but he's got a chance.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't see it. After swinging and missing on Ash, I think you have to try and find a established head coach, even if it's at a lower level. Obviously, Schiano would be a home run. I think there's mixed results in bringing guys back for second tours of duty, but I think that would work.
Do you think he's the favorite right now?
Yeah, if he wants it, I would think you'd have to give it to him. And Chris Creighton. I mean, the guy's won at every level on his way up, Division II, and obviously doing a great job in Eastern Michigan. He's a guy, and then you hear some Joe Moorhead talk too, maybe kind of get out at Mississippi State.
I'm not a fan of that. I'm not interested in Moorhead as a Rutgers fan. I'd rather I'd be open to Creighton. Obviously, we're both Chris Creighton fans. Leopold, I'd be interested in. There's a possibility there. Monken, I thought was interesting. His name was brought up by one of the Rutgers writers. Look, he's a winner, right? No question about it. I'm not sure whether or not that means that they would run a triple option in the Big Ten, but he's a winner, and I would definitely want to sit down with him if possible.
Yeah, and just because a guy runs the triple option in Army doesn't mean he can't adapt and run. There's different kinds of run based attacks. It's not, you don't have to run the triple option. Tulane's done some things that aren't quite 100% option. They're throwing the ball more this year, but Willie Fritz has done some different things too.
Okay, let's go right into the breakdown now into college football this week, and we'll start as we always do in the SEC. So with Alabama, another blowout win for the Crimson Tide. The thing, though, with Alabama that I've been noticing, and I think a lot of people have been noticing, is the defense is not getting much better than what we saw at the end of last season. And they're going to start playing some good football teams. And I'm really excited about seeing there's maybe a chink in the armor of Alabama, how good Auburn's playing, how good LSU's playing. We know Florida's better. We know Georgia's good. This is now looking like it's going to be we're going to see some great SEC games coming up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Alabama's obviously the offense is, probably the best of the Nick Saban year, probably better than last year. But defensively, they're so young in so many spots that injuries have not helped. But they will probably get better because of their youth and guys getting more time. But I'm with you. I don't think you just assume Alabama's going to run the table by any stretch because of their defensive issues right now.
What about the rest of the SEC? Knicks at Auburn. I was happy, if I'm an Auburn fan, and remember we talked about this last week, being a dominant defense is one thing, but you have to start doing something on offense if you want to win a national championship. And for the first time, Knicks against a quality FBS opponent lit it up offensively. That's great. We know the kid is just going to get better every time he goes out there. That's a huge accomplishment last week. And now all of a sudden you got to take Auburn very seriously.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we talked about this last week, I think, but Auburn, you gave them credit for what they had accomplished, but they had not been great offensively. Nix had made some big plays when he needed to, but had not been very efficient. But he answered all the issues last week against Mississippi State, answered any questions. Still a freshman. I think some elite defenses can force him into some mistakes, but I mean, he continues to get better. And yeah, I thought Auburn almost proved more in that game than they did in previous wins because they played such a complete game.
And speaking of Auburn, they're at Florida this week, so they're in an interesting stretch with their schedule. We mentioned that last week. As far as Florida, they get some healthy bodies back, so they're as healthy. I think just the kid, Tony, it might be the only key guy that won't be there. So they're as healthy as they need to be in this matchup. And look, Trask has done a really nice job. But now he's got to go up against that Auburn defense. That's why the Tigers are a 2.5-point favorite. I like Auburn in this one.
Yeah, I like Auburn. I think it's a tough matchup because of strength. The defensive front is going against Florida's weakness, the offensive line. Florida has not run the ball well against good teams so far this year, and I think that's going to be a big problem. I think they can slow down the run and force Trask into throwing the ball, and I think that's going to play right into Auburn's hands. So I'm really intrigued by this game, but I'm with you. I like Auburn to win on the road.
Now, get this. First meeting of these two teams since 2011, which is just
crazy.
Weird. First top 10 matchup in the Swamp since 2012. And let's keep in mind that Florida's on a 9-game winning streak, which is the longest for them since they won 22 in a row between 08 and 09. It's also the 4th best in the nation behind Clemson, Ohio State, and who?
To me.
Appalachian State.
Wow.
Florida's at LSU next week, by the way. Another big matchup. Yes. That's what you love about what's going to happen here. And speaking of LSU, they host our boys from Utah State. Big class jump up for the
Great
Aggies.
Quarterback battle.
Yes. Love. He's not going to be a first rounder, but he's going to be a guy that's going to be intriguing to follow at the next level, especially if he gets to the right teacher. He's a gunslinger. That's what he is. But if he turns the ball over, which he's prone to because he throws the ball a little bit too much, you can't do that against that LSU defense. But hey, could be a fun game. You never know.
Yeah, high point spread there. I just can't see Utah State, scoring enough to win this game. I think LSU is going to put up a huge number. Should be a fun one, but could be the best quarterback battle in the country this weekend.
Yeah, good one. Now, how about if you want to talk about a 3 to 4 touchdown dog in the SEC? I'm not looking at Utah State. I'm looking at Troy. Now, Troy, get this. They're 9-0-2 against the spread. Their last 11 as a road dog. Wow. And more importantly, the last 3 years versus Power 5 teams. Last year, beat Nebraska as a 10-point road dog. 2017, beat LSU as a 20-point road dog. And in 2016, made Clemson sweat as a number 2 ranked team in the country as a 35-point road dog, losing by 6 points. Now, this was under Neil Brown. That's the big difference. But I'm looking at a Missouri team that, come on, we both know they're vulnerable. I would definitely put a couple of bucks on Troy in the money line here because you just never know.
Yeah, the spread's pretty high. I think Missouri's getting a little too much respect. They've been very good since that weird loss at Wyoming. Not quite sure what happened there, but I think the number's too high. Troy, lost at home last week to Arkansas State, but they're still scoring some points there. So it'll be interesting. I agree. I think that number's a little bit too high.
That's the thing is that Missouri just hasn't beaten. Okay, you beat South Carolina. Okay, you beat West Virginia, but they haven't really played a legit. I don't even know if they played a bowl team outside of Wyoming yet. I don't know. Maybe they have. I think they have, but we don't. So the schedule. So that's why I think they're vulnerable. And by the way, I also like going with spots where you got a Missouri team that's in their 4th straight at home. They've been home since week 1, since that Wyoming game. Next week's homecoming. So it's one of those situations where, when you almost get too comfortable sometimes being at home for so long, and then you face a team from the Sun Belt, you're a 4-touchdown favorite, you never know. Maybe you catch them napping. Maybe.
Yeah, it's especially since about to dive back in SEC play, too.
All right, now, and too bad that Arkansas lost last week. We both had Arkansas in that one. They were a 24-point dog. I had some money on the money line for crying out loud as an 11-1 dog. And you know what? I think that they probably outplayed at Texas A&M in that one just a little bit. But as usual, they don't make the plays in that series. That's why they always lose.
Yep. 5 out of 6 now have been 7 points or fewer. Lost them all.
We'll talk about it next year as well. Hopefully it'll be a big line again. We can take advantage of it. Let's go to the Big Ten. And Ohio State just destroyed Nebraska. But when I came out of that game, yes, definitely impressed with Ohio State. But what is going on with Adrian Martinez? Frost I have no problem with. He's going to be fine. But what happened to Adrian Martinez?
So, good question. Sometimes it's too much too soon, especially with these freshman quarterbacks. We fall in love with their production as freshmen and just assume things that don't happen. And, I credit, like you said, credit Ohio State, just completely taking the crowd out of the game. They were awesome in every facet. But something missing offensively for Nebraska.
And I'll tell you what, I don't care how inept Northwestern's offense is. They proved last week against Wisconsin that Pat Fitzgerald, as a dog, anytime he's out there, is going to be dangerous. I think they're a good dog against Nebraska because I think Nebraska's confidence is just so bad. They were outgained by South Alabama week 1. This is just not something that happened last week. This has been going on since the first week of the season.
Yeah, but they also have 2 defensive scores, so you're not on the field as much when you do that. So I am not as – I like Nebraska in that game. Northwestern's offense scares me. I know all the Pat Fitzgerald stats, but Northwestern's quarterback play has been bad. They're not doing anything well on offense against some injuries.
They'd have to score on defense, but that's how they do it. I was surprised that Michael Penix had such a good game against Michigan State. That's a bad sign for me. Now you got to take on Fields, so it's either a blip in the radar. And it's just one of those games, and we'll find out on Saturday, or all of a sudden Ohio State's going, wait a second, look what we found out, how we can expose Michigan State. Well, I was kind of surprised. Michigan State's offense produced, but they couldn't stop Indiana.
Yeah, they've been a weird team, Michigan State. Like they've had some dreadful offensive performances. Obviously, specifically the Arizona State game, they played well on offense. Northwestern, Indiana, but they gave up points to Indiana. Penix come back. I think that was his first game back from injury. Yep. So yeah, I don't. I don't see the Ohio State train getting slowed down this
I agree.
week.
What about Iowa, Michigan? This is a real tough one to figure out because Michigan doesn't get any credit for blowing out Rutgers. I'm actually leaning towards Iowa.
I am more intrigued. This isn't the best game of the day, but Greg, I am more intrigued by how Michigan plays than any other team in the country this week to see how they bounce back again. Like you said, Rutgers, that's a big deal. You're supposed to beat Rutgers badly. How will they bounce back? I like Michigan at home. Maybe I'm just keep sticking with Michigan here, but if they don't play well, if they lay another egg, that's I don't know.
It's going to be a long year. Yeah, if they don't win this football game, it's going to be a long year. And keep in mind, Iowa, just like Wisconsin, they've had some success against Michigan lately. They've won 5 out of 6 against Michigan. Now, they don't play every year, but they've beaten Michigan the last 2 times since 2013. Maybe they get Alaric Jackson back, the offensive lineman. That's possible. Keep an eye on that. And the last time these two teams played was in Iowa in 2016, and Michigan was a 24-point favorite. Iowa won the game 14-13. So they seem to have Michigan's number. All right, let's move on over to the ACC. Clemson. Last week, I talked about how I felt at some point during this season that Clemson was going to get upset when nobody expected it. I didn't think it was going to happen last week, but I said, well, I'm curious, and it almost happened. A 2-point conversion that goes right for North Carolina, and there's the upset. People seem to be talking and referencing Clemson is without their stud defensive lineman. I don't understand why they're doing that. The defense is not the problem. It's the offense.
Right. I talked last week. They had, before last week, they had not given up a meaningful touchdown all season. They were all in garbage time. That obviously changed last week. But yeah, it's their defense is national championship good. Offense is. I saw someone sort of an analytic study of it. I forgot who put this out, but it's basically saying that they're throwing the ball downfield well, that they were successful on last year. Maybe that's the Hunter Renfrow being gone or what have you, but they've got the athletes to go deep. There's not, their passing game isn't as versatile, I guess maybe would be one word for it. But they definitely have the weapons.
And we also mentioned last week that it could have to do with the fact that Trevor Lawrence is a sophomore coming off a season which everybody was talking about. Oh, he's the best quarterback in college football. He would be the first draft pick in the NFL. Why can't he go to the NFL already? It's a stupid rule. Sometimes, whether it gets to his head, there's just so much expected. I'd actually think that maybe that's one of the things that might be hurting them is just overconfidence. I don't know. I'm grasping for straws here.
It's hard to tell, obviously, what's going on collectively. You got 186 scholarship, 85 scholarship players or whatever. It's hard. We can sit here and try and analyze it. Obviously, North Carolina deserves credit, but something seems to be slightly missing at Clemson.
Now, could it be Florida State? Even though I'm sure that's a game where people will go, well, Florida State, they're playing better. Once again, I'm going to pose the same question I posed to you last week. I said I'd go with Hornibrook. You said you'd go with Blackman. Blackman didn't play. Hornibrook played well again. You're sticking with Blackman. And I haven't heard anything, and I assume they're going to stick with Blackman when he's healthy next week. But you tell me, Hornibrook or Blackman against Clemson?
That's a tough one. Probably Blackman, but, if they keep playing, if they play well without him, then, it's obviously a different scenario there. But and I keep saying, for all the issues at Florida State, again, they're only a few plays away from being undefeated this year. For as much negativity as they're surrounding the program. And whatever happens, it's good to see Hornibrook playing well, at least. He was much maligned at Wisconsin, and kind of, I don't know if he got run out of town, if that's the right way to say it there, but, it's nice to see him having some success.
What about Virginia? That was just I don't. Those losses are not. They don't sit well for me. If I'm a Virginia fan, you can lose to a team that's better than you, but when you're a double-digit dog playing a storied program at Notre Dame, and not many people expecting you to win, and you actually outplay the team, but you basically, except of course, look, I don't want to take anything away from Notre Dame's defense, which was fantastic. What was that?
They couldn't really block.
Yeah, Notre Dame's defense was fantastic.
Right.
But the turnovers, just Perkins is the best quarterback they've had there in a while, but he holds on to the ball too long, and it came back to hurt him. But they just gave that game away.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't see the whole game. From what I saw, I credit Notre Dame's defense overwhelming them. Sometimes turnovers are fluky, and the other team is fortunate. I mean, I credit Notre Dame's defense for the defensive scores there in changing the game. So I would slightly disagree. I mean, I didn't walk away from that thinking Virginia outplayed them. I thought Notre Dame's defense stole was the story of the game.
Virginia had two opportunities. They had the onside kick to start the second half, but they don't get nothing. They had the muff punt at midfield, but they don't get nothing. Matter of fact, they got the lead early third quarter, strip sack, return to like the 5, goes into the end zone a couple plays later. Notre Dame scores a defensive touchdown. So really, they got 2 defensive touchdowns basically in that situation. You just can't lose the game like that if you're Virginia. Look, if you're Mendenhall, you're behind the scenes, as rough as it was to lose that game. You have to feel real good about what you're building there. That's going to attract more and more recruits, and he's going to get even a better quarterback in the next couple of years and even more talent. This is going to be a really good football team soon. They're not there yet, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything less of Virginia after that game by any stretch. Notre Dame's a top 10 team. They went on the road. They acquitted themselves, fine.
All right. The only game of we got Virginia Tech, Miami, Pitt, Duke this week. Pinkett didn't play last week when they almost lost to Delaware, but he's supposed to play this week. Pitt always seems to beat Duke. So actually, that's why I'm actually going to side with Pitt this week in that game against Duke. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think they've won 5 of 6. They've won every game but one since joining the the ACC. Duke played extremely well last week. Quentin Harris has been fantastic. It would be very Pitt-like to win this game as a road dog after almost losing at home to Delaware.
Yeah.
But I'm going with Duke at home.
All right. Baylor, big win of Iowa State, underrated Big 12 game. We knew, and that's exactly what it was. Down 20-0. Iowa State comes back, takes the lead. Baylor wins the game. Baylor will go to Kansas State this week. Iowa State will host TCU this week.
Yeah, a lot of intrigue in the Big 12. I mean, I think it's some of the best games on the schedule this week. TCU, Iowa State. TCU not getting great quarterback play. Iowa State, this is a big win for them. They've let a couple games slip away. They lose this game. They're 2-3. Not what you expected under Matt Campbell. I'll go Iowa State at home. Baylor, Kansas State's interesting. Loved what the trajectory of the Kansas State program. I don't know how much talent they have, how much skill they have. I'd go Baylor on the road there, and I like Oklahoma State at Texas Tech as well.
Iowa State has won 4 straight Big 12 home games, but never 5. That's interesting. They're also 7-0 since 2017 in October versus the Big 12, and they've covered 9 straight as a home favorite of less than 10 points. So, yeah, I like Iowa State against TCU as well. I just think they're more balanced overall. And we'll see about that Baylor game because after an emotional win, we'll see if they could rebound. But again, this is what the Big 12 is going to be the rest of the season. Some really good action. Next week we've got Oklahoma, Texas, of course, coming up. Let's move on to the Pac-12 and Arizona State. Isn't it interesting how they struggle to score points early in games? But then against Michigan State and Cal, when it mattered the most, they're able to march down the field and put the ball in the end zone and win these games. So congratulate them for sticking with it and winning a game like that again. But tough loss for California because Garbers was starting to heat up, and now he's out for a while, maybe the rest of the season.
Yeah, they're going to struggle. I mean, offensively they have issues, obviously, and then Monster has not played well. maybe getting the start. He'll play better there. But, like you said, credit Arizona State for finding ways to win. Not always pretty, but they've got some nice road wins.
And the Arizona-UCLA game was kind of weird the way it went down because no Tate, no Taylor. Felton got 8 touches because Chip Kelly said Arizona was playing a zone defense. I didn't want to hear him say that. I wish he would have said something else or kept his mouth shut because I'm sorry, you can't have 8 touches for the most exciting, electrifying player on the field. I don't care what defense they're playing. But look, a gutsy win for Arizona, and now they got to go ahead and take on Colorado. Whoever wins that game is going to be feeling pretty good about themselves.
Yeah, and Tate and Taylor both questionable last I saw. The freshman quarterback kid from Houston played well. But you'd obviously prefer to have Tate going on the road there. So, yeah, I like Colorado at home. And, Mel Tucker's done a nice job. Obviously, they stubbed their toe against Air Force, but they've got some nice wins, one at Arizona State. So this is other than maybe Oregon State, who's playing better, and I would say UCLA, except they have a win at Washington State. There don't appear to be really bad teams in the Pac-12. Not a lot of great teams, but there's pretty much every game's intriguing because none of these teams are really bad.
And by the way, Chenault, Mustafa Johnson, and Chris Miller, the starting cornerback for Colorado, will all be game time decisions for Colorado. So both teams dealing with some key injuries. I'm not going to give up on Cal at Oregon. Let's keep in mind last year they beat Washington at home when Garbers wasn't doing anything. And their offense did nothing in the game against Washington. So considering that Oregon hasn't exactly lit it up, I mean, they didn't go up and down the field against Stanford. I wouldn't throw Cal out of this game as bad as Modster played, and I wouldn't be surprised if they gave the true freshman a chance to play. As bad if they could figure out a way to produce some points defensively, or maybe they bring in the true freshman, or the South Carolina transfer can run around for a few snaps. I'm gonna say this is gonna be a closer game than people think.
Yeah, he is. Oregon has not given up a touchdown since that Auburn game winner in the end zone.
They've been very impressive on defense. I agree with you. Good point.
Yeah. I think they will overwhelm them offensively. And by the way, Brendan McElwain, the South Carolina transfer, he's focusing on baseball now. He's not on the team.
All right.
I don't believe. Yeah.
All right. Now let's talk about the Independents, and I just want to bring up BYU because they lose a tough one to Toledo, and they also lose their quarterback. They have just been having injury after injury after what looked like it was going to be a promising season. So let's talk about Sataki because we talked about this last year. What about his job status? Do you think that if they wind up barely going to a bowl or no bowl, do you think he stays with the team next year?
Well, here's the problem. They're 2-3, and while they've got 2 nice wins at Tennessee and South Carolina, Boise State and maybe Utah State, which is a rivalry game, are the only really named teams they play. So if they struggle, like they can't really, other than those 2, there's not many big wins to be had, and there's only bad losses. So if they go 6-6, and those wins don't include Boise State or Utah State, I think he'd probably not be back. I think they have to win both of those games. I know there's been some talk there. I don't pretend to know the ins and outs of what's going on at BYU and the culture and all that, other than the fact that they're used to winning games and they're not used to going 5-7.
Yeah. Well, I said last year, Mike Leach. I know there was some rumblings about Mike Leach leaving Washington State at the end of the season. He stayed. I'm going to just say it again. I mean, why not Mike Leach? I think I'm getting the feeling that Leach won't be back at Washington State next season.
Interesting.
And why not go back to your alma mater? Why not? I mean, BYU is still a program that, with his ability to juice up these teams, I think it's a good marriage. I don't know whether or not it would work, but why not go back to your alma mater?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it too much, but that would be interesting.
All right, AAC. We both were very depressed when Navy couldn't hold on to beat Memphis last week. We both had them as upsets. Yes. Perry was having another great game until he got hurt. Then they had the kick return touchdown against them. And once Perry got hurt, their offense went nowhere, and they lose the football game. So now Navy is going to take on Air Force. We start these academy matchups, and this is actually one of your top. No, the other Army's your top pick. But what do you think about this one? Because Navy is there. It was a very tough loss for them. I think you have to read between the lines though and see that with Perry's healthy, they're a completely different team.
Yeah, I totally agree. I watched that game. I felt really about Navy until he got hurt there. Again, if he's not there, I just don't trust him.
All right. What about now? Louisiana Monroe, one of your sleepers in the Sun Belt, is going to be your upset pick of the week. If you couldn't beat Memphis last week, you're going to try to beat them this week.
Yeah, they can score some points. I know, Iowa State shut them down, but that's a different defense there. So, I roll the dice and, see if Monroe can score some points.
Hey, why not? I mean, Memphis was vulnerable last week, and Monroe is at home, which is nice to see that they get the home game against Memphis. Central Florida, Cincinnati. That's the big one in the conference this week. It's going to be on Friday. What do you think about that one?
I've been all week trying to have the guts to pick Cincinnati.
I know.
I think I'm going to do it. You know what? I think they can match them. I think they got some athletes. Obviously, quarterback Ritter and Warren hasn't been as great at running the ball, but Central Florida, or UCF, excuse me, how they like to be called. Obviously stubbed its toe against Pitt. I'm looking forward to watching this game. I'm intrigued by it. As you can tell, I'm waffling. I'll stick with Cincinnati, but don't have a great feel either way.
Okay. And by the way, Central Florida, since their 2015 winless season, has won and covered against Cincinnati the last 3 years by a 113-39 margin. So they have had no problem in this rivalry the last 3 years. We'll see if that continues. As we move on to the Mountain West, we kind of talk about both conferences because Air Force is at Navy. 3.5-point spread for Air Force. See, for me, if I know Perry's going to play the whole game, I'm taking Navy. But I don't know. I mean, that's why I'm probably not going to touch the game. I'll just enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Always fun for the commander-in-chief games like that, but there's just such a different team when Perry's not there.
This might be the last chance for Tony Sanchez if he can't pull off a miracle upset against Boise, which he won't. I think this might be his last year. Things aren't going well for UNLV.
Well, I'll tell him. I'll see him next week when UNLV comes to Vanderbilt. I'll tell him that you. If they lose, I'll tell him that you said he's gone.
Well, interesting because I actually have a note in my handicapping book about how UNLV could be a good upset against Vandy. I don't remember why, but I'll talk about it next week.
Okay, I'll pass that note along to the Vanderbilt coaches.
Yeah, you do that. And by the way, I think Colorado State's going to upset San Diego State this week. I mean, I think Colorado State's actually been so much better than anybody thought they would be.
Yeah, and San Diego State's been a weird team offensively. That's not a bad one.
Sun Belt, Arkansas State screwed you last week over Troy.
Yes.
But that's because Lane Hatcher, the true freshman, had a great game. And that's why sometimes you stay away from games when you don't know about a quarterback. But this kid looks like the real deal, and that's that's going to be something. They're going to be able to have this kid around for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, where'd they pull this guy from? Yeah, I obviously did not know of his existence before the win over Troy.
Well, he was actually like Mr. Arkansas.
Okay.
He was an Alabama one-time commit.
That's right. I read about him after the fact. Yeah,
yep.
I did. Yeah, I read about him after the fact. I think actually now I remember reading about him last year.
Yeah. Yep. And one more thing in this conference, Appalachian State at Louisiana next Wednesday. So we'll wrap up that game next Thursday. I just want to mention it because Louisiana is playing great football this year. That's going to be a nice rematch of the championship game.
Yeah, definitely. And Billy Napier's doing a great job.
Yep.
Obviously, a Nick Saban guy, but it's been Arizona State's been all over the place, and he's done a really good job at Louisiana.
All right, now let's go ahead and get with our picks. Let's talk about our final 4 picks. And let's, first of all, my final 4, I'm going to go with Ohio State, LSU, Georgia, and Clemson. And I'm going to give Clemson a chance. I'm still not sold, but it's between Clemson or Oklahoma. But I think Clemson's got an easier schedule. So and he can't have 3 SEC teams in the playoffs. So that'll be my 4, and I'll go with LSU to win the championship.
Those are my 4 as well right now.
Wow. We're never usually the same.
Yeah, and you know what? As I was just scratching some notes here. I had Georgia's the 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3, LSU 4, but I don't see Clemson being a 3 seed because I think if they lose, they're not going to make it because of their schedule, and if they keep winning, they won't be a 3 seed. So I'll go Georgia to win it, and maybe I'd go Clemson as the 2 seed, then LSU or Ohio State, then LSU.
So Georgia the champion.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to who. Give me a sleeper. The 4 obvious sleepers to me are Auburn, Wisconsin, Texas, and Oregon. Regarding the odds,
I'll go Washington.
You still sold on Washington? Okay.
I'm not. Well, just a sleeper. I'm not sold on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're.
I think they're getting it going, and I think they're going to win big this week. So.
What are their odds again?
Oh, I didn't even.
Okay, no,
I didn't even look at them.
No
I just was picking
they're big enough. Don't worry about it. Because after you lose to Cal, those odds are big enough.
It's worth nothing anyway. So.
Top group of 5. Mine is SMU.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm sick of Boise State.
I'm completely sold on SMU. I'm all in.
Okay. I've heard some Tulsa talk this week. Possible upset.
Upset schmupset.
Okay.
SMU's
okay. I'll
for real.
Boise State.
Yeah, tell the person who said Tulsa upset. Tell them they need to.
You disagree. I'll
be polite. Yes, I disagree. Top Heisman contenders. Give me 5. Make sure you have a sleeper or 2 in there that nobody is expecting.
Okay. Well, let me start with my sleeper. I'm looking at the Tyler Huntley.
Oh, really?
If he can stay healthy.
I like it. If he can stay healthy, that's important. Okay.
Yeah.
Quarterback from Utah.
Zach Moss has obviously been. So I want to go look at the odds here real quick. A little lack of show prep I'm guilty of here.
I don't even know where Huntley would be. He's probably.
Yeah.
Who knows? He could be like 100 to 1.
Yeah. So let me look at the. Okay, my Heisman. See, here's my dilemma. Right now, I don't see how you don't put Hurts number 1, but I just don't see it. I don't see him winning. I'm going to go Burrow as my pick to win the Heisman.
I like it. I agree, especially since I'm taking LSU to win the championship. Right. I agree.
2-2, Hurts 3, Fields 4, Taylor 5.
Okay, and Huntley is your sleeper.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll throw in 3 new names.
Okay, let's hear them.
Chuba Hubbard.
Okay.
Why not? I mean, he's just a fantastic, electrifying little guy in the backfield who's just leading the nation. He's got 57 yards more per game rushing than the second guy, Dobbins. That's how good he's.
Dobbins passed Taylor this week. Yeah.
My number 2 all-purpose yardage player in the country, the kid I love for Appalachian State, Darrington Evans.
You are his
I'm his poster boy.
Agent.
Yes.
Yes.
And hey, Jamie Newman. I got to throw Jamie
Newman
in there again.
Yeah.
Because
can't go wrong.
Now, maybe if he beats Clemson in Death Valley and has a big game, then maybe he'll be invited to New York. What do you think?
Maybe. Good luck with that.
And by the way, as far as your top picks, and we're going to post them up on primesportsnetwork.com as we always do. We talked about, well, actually we didn't. Army is your top pick, right?
Yes, I think there's and I love Tulane. I think there's a little too much Tulane love. So Army plus 3.
It's interesting that you said that because when I looked at the odds, I was like, why isn't Army favored by 3? I was kind of surprised that they were getting 3 at home. So I agree. And who else did you have in there as your top 3?
Northern Illinois minus 4.5 over Ball State.
And Ball State, can
Maryland,
they win a big game for crying out loud? Not a big game, but a meaningful game because
it's a big game,
the kid
so
Plitt's having a fantastic year.
Yeah. Maryland 13.5 over Rutgers. Just think Rutgers is
Rutgers
not good at football.
Nunzio's going to lead the charge. He's going to have the Newt Rockne speach at the beginning of the game.
And then get the job. Rice 8.5 over UAB. I think Rice is getting close.
I like it.
And then UNC minus 10 over Georgia Tech, who cannot score.
Yeah, and they also lost their number 1 receiver and their starting center for the season, Georgia Tech. Mitch, great job as always. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds